Hello, this is Glenn from SimAbility, and today I'm going to show you how to run a cable through a G27 base. That cable can be used for an upgrade for hand controls so that you don't have to run an external cable. It can also be used with the SRWS1 adapter, anything like that. Now, it should go without saying, but if you're going to take this apart and do this modification, it's going to void any warranty you have. Just be careful not to break your wheel. And again, this is not required. This is an optional thing for SimAbility hand controls. I've already removed the 8 screws that hold the wheel on. I've removed the electronics clip and the 3 screws that hold the shifter base on. So now we have the base, and what we need to do is remove the 8 screws holding the base together. I've marked them in orange. We've got 4 across the front and 4 around the back. These screws inside here do not come off. You leave those on. Just take these screws around the outside off, and you'll need a long, narrow screwdriver to get into there. Okay, so once we have our screws out and we've safely removed them and gathered them back up, we'll go ahead and remove the case halves just by simply lifting up on the bottom half. And you're going to take the clamps with it, and the shaft, you'll just kind of carefully pull that out through the wheel. We can go and set that aside. Okay, one of the challenges with getting the cable through the G27 base is, if you can see down there, or you look in your wheel, there's a very, very small hole. The hole is big enough for the stock G27 cable, and so we need to add additional wires or replace that cable, and I'll show you how to get to that. Okay, once we're inside of our case, what I like to do is go ahead and remove all of the wires from one side of the circuit board. In this case, I've removed, I prefer to take the right side off because there's one less connector, I believe. I'm going to remove those, and then remove the 4 screws holding the circuit board on. There's also a plastic cover down here, remove that. Then you can just swing the board out of the way. Makes it much easier. A little extra work to get the connectors out. Just be careful, get in there with a small pliers or screwdriver, get those connectors out. Once you have the circuit board out of the way, remove the 4 screws holding the metal plate. Once you have those removed, you can pull that out of the way. And then I'm going to go ahead, and what I have to do, because the wire that I'm going to add is too thick to go through the wheelbase along with the stock G27 wire. So again, if you have a USB cable you're trying to run through there, you can pull the G27 wire out and then just run the USB cable through there, provided it's small enough. In this case, I do have to run these wires in addition to the stock cable. So I've cut the cable off here. This one's been cut a few times, as you can see. That way I'm able to remove the cable. What I'm going to do then is I will go ahead and I will run these wires in, and I will put all of this in a piece of heat shrink or shrink wrap, and then I'll run it back through. Now, for the wire that I'm using, I'm just using it's an extra wire from a DIN plug PS2 connector. This is a 5 conductor. I need 4 conductors, but I'm going to go ahead and run all 5 if they'll fit. That way I have an extra. And then I just, to strip this down, just take a hobby knife or some sharp knife and just very lightly scribe the casing, and then you can just pull it off. But I've left plenty of extra for myself to work with here. Okay, for actually running the wire outside the base, what I like to do is drill a hole in the base about where the stock wires come out anyways. That way you have all your wires coming out in the same place. The hole I've used here is a 11/16, and and when you drill that, be sure, have someone help you. Be sure that the circuit board is out of the way, and when you drill this, so you don't do any damage to your wheel. That's where I like to personally run the cable. And so we'll go ahead, and I will go ahead and put all of this into some shrink wrap and then route it through the base. The shrink wrap that I'm using here is about 5/32 of an inch or 4 millimeter, right about that size. Go ahead and pull both wires through. What we need to do, we need to leave enough of the stock G27 cable so that it can wrap around and plug back into the cord. So you'll see there's some curvature in the cable there. So we're going to run our new cable up about like that. So that's kind of what we want coming out of the wheel there. You want to get your new cable where it's stripped back. You want to try to get that up underneath the heat shrink. If you can't, add an extra pair on there because you don't want the wire to be loose and breaking there. So I'm going to try to squeeze this into the existing heat shrink. Okay, so it was a tight fit, but I did get it in there. So I've got both of my wires into the heat shrink. Now we can try to run it through the hole in the wheel. Most likely, what I'm going to have to do is shrink this part of it so it'll fit in the hole. In fact, let me just do that. Okay, so I just shrunk it all the way down. I know that'll fit. Obviously heat gun's handy if you have one, otherwise you'll be here for a little while with the lighter. Okay, let's go ahead and get our wire started. Okay, and if you have trouble with that, just put a little extra piece of heat shrink or tape on there. That'll help you get the wire started. There we go. We want to be sure when we pull this through here that it's not too tight. So it's a little snug, but there's still some freedom. We want to be sure that when the shaft rotates that it's not twisting the wire. And I think we're in good shape here. Okay, so that's it. We can go ahead and I can splice my stock connector back on. I can go and hook up my hand controls here. I'll go ahead and I do need to run this wire underneath the servo motor. We could go either side, I suppose. Get that under the servo motor, and I'll try to keep a little extra wire up in here if I can, and then I'll run the other end out the hole, the 11/16 hole we drilled in the bottom. And then it'll come out and it'll line up with the existing wiring. Put it all back together, and then we've got our extra wires run. Okay, I've added some lights, so hopefully we can see this. But this is the final routing. The G27 stock wire comes through here. It sets in this cavity right here. And it will be safely underneath the metal plate. I just dropped a piece of tire wrap in there. Let me get that out of there. Alright. And then the wire that we added will loop around here. It goes underneath the motor. And I was going to try to put some extra in here. I did not, because we don't want the extra wire getting caught up in the gears or anything like that. So keep the wire tight enough that it won't get up in the gears. And I bring it back. And I didn't mention earlier, but if you want to bring your wire out the center where all the other wires are, you're going to have to cut a groove, a notch in the webbing, the plastic webbing here, so that the plate can go on over the wire. If you don't want to cut a notch there, what you can do is just run the wire out over here somewhere on the side. And then the last thing I did is I did put a tie wrap on the wire to help keep it from getting pulled out.